Hello and welcome to another episode of the Breachside Broadcast, home of the finest vox casting either side of the breach. On today's episode, we conclude the madness of Malifaux, a story that has engulfed all the major factions and changed the balance of power forever. I hope you enjoy part 8 of the madness of Malifaux right after this word from our sponsor. This episode of the Breachside Broadcast is brought to you by Greasy Bill's Carriage Repairs. We fix and maintain carriages, landaus and stagecoaches from all the major manufacturers. Let Greasy Bill keep your vehicle in tip-top shape from the wheels to the reins. Visit today for a discount on Hackney coaches.
The carriage bucked and swayed across the uneven road, upsetting the precarious state of Ludwig's belly. The minced tarts he'd had for breakfast sat uneasily in his gut. The back and forth of the suspension, combined with the burbling in his midsection, was making this an increasingly unpleasant journey. He hoped it was worth it. "What did you say this fellow's name was again?" Ludwig asked. Jacobson, the clerk seated on the facing bench, withdrew a small notebook from the inner pocket of his suit jacket, flipped it open, and scanned the contents. "Parson. We've had limited contact with him prior to this. He has extensive knowledge of Tyrant-era technology, but has been shy about meeting in person." He flipped the notebook shut again and tucked it away. "We've dealt with intermediaries." "No bloody wonder. He lives on the ass end of nowhere." Ludwig flicked aside the velvet curtains and squinted outside. Rocky terrain and scrubby trees sped past. They were on a steady incline, following switchbacks up the side of a mountain. "We're sure this isn't a trap." "We are not," Jacobson said. "Comforting." Ludwig let the curtain fall, then drew a crystal decanter of whiskey from the side compartment and poured a heavy glass. He tilted the bottle toward Jacobson. "Some courage?" "I have sufficient courage for both of us," Jacobson said with a tight smile. He patted the bulge under his arm. Ludwig smirked. "Precisely the sort of thing a man says before his first and last gunfight." He threw back the whiskey, savoring the burn as it trickled down his throat. The gurgle in his stomach sharpened. "I would feel better if McCabe were here." "Mr. McCabe is otherwise occupied," Jacobson said. The carriage lurched harshly to the left, then clattered to a halt. "I believe we've arrived. Or perhaps the horses have died and we're going to have to walk home." Ludwig shelved his glass, wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, and waved to the door. "After you, Jacobson. You and your courage." Beyond the heavy velvet curtains and dark wood paneling of the carriage's interior, the world was bright and hot and dusty. Ludwig scrunched up his face as he crawled awkwardly out of the carriage. The suspension creaked as the heavy man descended the fold-out steps. Perspiration instantly beaded his forehead, demanding the attention of the monogrammed kerchief tucked into his sleeve. Ludwig craned his neck and looked around. "Well," he mumbled to himself, "this is a disappointing start." They had reached the top of the mountain. Broken rocks and sun-baked boulders crowned the peak. There was nothing else. The road just disappeared. "Hello," Jacobson called. The man clutched his valise to his chest with both hands. How he intended to reach his courage like that was a mystery to Ludwig. "Is anyone there?" "Shouting is hardly necessary, Jacobson. Either the man is dead, or he is well aware of our presence," Ludwig said. "In my experience, Men who live on the tops of mountains are very particular about their privacy." "You are correct, sir." The voice was melodic, almost metallic, and everywhere. "I trust you are not followed." "We conduct all of our business with the greatest propriety, Mr. Parson," Ludwig said, carefully turning in a slow circle, trying to find the speaker. "We respect your privacy as much as we respect our own. You come in a gilded carriage, wearing suits and carrying firearms, and yet you speak of privacy." The voice cut out with a whine of static. A figure appeared from the shadow of the surrounding rocks. It was crooked, like a man who'd been snapped in half and put back together the wrong way. "I don't think you know much of privacy, Mr. von Clausewitz." The creature that stepped into the light was surprisingly feral. Its skin was a dark shade of blue, and a bony crest framed its skull. When it approached, Ludwig was surprised to see that its legs were forward swept, like an ostrich, with wide cloven feet. Its mouth was filled with dozens of small, sharp teeth. It was wearing a cloak that matched the surrounding stone almost perfectly. Ludwig startled back, and Jacobson's valise hit the back dirt of the yard with a crack. Ludwig looked over his shoulder and saw that the man had drawn his courage. A tiny revolver, so new that it still had the manufacturer's seal on the cylinder. "Don't be ridiculous, Jacobson. No one is getting shot. Hopefully." Ludwig daubed sweat from his forehead and faced the creature. It was tall and moved gracefully. "We're looking for a man named Parson." "I am Parson," the creature said. Though the speaker effect was gone, when Parson spoke, his voice was still clearly melodic. Ludwig was reminded of those music boxes that seemed to speak when you wound them. Parson strode across the sun-baked mountaintop on his odd legs. "And you are Ludwig von Clausewitz and Chester Jacobson of the Explorer Society, yes?" "We are." "Good. Follow me." Parson passed the carriage and disappeared into a cleft between two stones. Ludwig and Jacobson shared a nervous look, then did as they were told. The crack led to an iron door, hanging slightly ajar. "Do get rid of that silly pistol, Mr. Jacobson. You're making me nervous." What is he? Nephilim?" Jacobson asked with a hiss. "Unless I missed my guess, our mystery contact is a member of the Oa, the very people who made most of the artifacts he traded to us." Ludwig laughed, the possibilities boiling in his mind. "Hell, he might have created the damn things. Imagine that." Surprisingly, the interior of the cave behind the door was considerably warmer than it had been outside. A wave of heat washed over Ludwig as he entered, instantly soaking his clothes in sweat. A forge sat in the middle of the room, its blazing red eye open and blasting flames. "You're a smith," Jacobson croaked. Parson shook his head as he slowly discarded his camouflaged cloak. Beneath he wore a dark robe, hung with delicate gems. "Then what is the purpose of the forge?" "My people suffer from an ailment gifted to us by the tyrant Cherufe for our rebellion." He rolled up a sleeve, revealing an ashen wound. Living cinders crawled through scar tissue. Heat slows the progress, for a time. He dropped the sleeve, then motioned for the two men to follow him deeper into the building. "It is why I live out here alone. The damn streets of Malifaux City are not for the Oa. Come, there are things you must see." Parson led them through a long galley, filled with various engines and quietly chuffing contraptions. Ludwig was practically salivating at all the artifacts. They passed a pair of sleek automata, two-legged and long, that might have served as mounts. There were walls of shelves stuffed with spare parts, scrolls, and all manner of strange devices. Parson ignored it all, but Ludwig kept stopping to peer at things through his monocle. "These must be some kind of measuring device, yes? And that looks like an ethervox, but without an antenna or power source. What are these? Mr. Parson, please, you must tell me what these are." "They're none of your business," Parson said brusquely. "I did not bring you out here for baubles." Your message said that you had something important to show us, Jacobson said. As you know from our previous arrangements, we pay handsomely for all matter of artifacts, or information that might lead to new discoveries. Our offers can be quite generous. What I have to show you is not for sale, Parsons said. He paused at a door that looked like it had been ripped from the bulkhead of a warship, complete with wheel lock and pressure hinge. The Oa looked between the men, as though weighing them. Believe me, if I had another option, we would not be speaking. He spun the door open and motioned them through. Ludwig stepped over the threshold with trepidation. The room beyond smelled of hot metal and old age, like the morgue in a retirement home. There were only two sources of light in the narrow, claustrophobic space beyond the door. The first was a lamp that hung low over a medical bed. Two figures, both Oa, huddled under its feeble light, one lying in the bed and the other kneeling at her side. The old Oa in the bed looked nearly dead, her frail limbs riven by seams of glowing cinders. Occasionally a puff of steam would vent from their lesions, sending puffs of cinder and ash into the air. The blanket that covered her was riddled with charred holes. The Oa woman at her side was exquisitely dressed. Her bony ridge hung with gems and jewelry, while her dress was cut from fine silks. Despite her dress, she looked like a heart-struck child in mourning. She whispered to the old woman in gentle, melodic words. The second source of light was the glowing edge of a bladed staff, held by a fully armored Oa in the corner. When Ludwig stepped into the room, the armored Oa lunged forward, putting himself between the door and the bed. His weapon whined to life, its blade sparkling with potent energy. "Peace, Danok," Parsons said, pushing past Ludwig. "These are the people I told you about. Ludwig, Jacobson. This is Elder Tiri, Elder Ava, and the stalwart Danok." "They are armed," Danok said stiffly. "You are in more danger from their papers than their weapons," Parsons said. "Regardless, we want everyone to be comfortable," Ludwig said. "Jacobson, the pistol." Jacobson carefully took the revolver from his coat and threw it on a nearby table. Danok relaxed slightly, but it wasn't until Parson physically pushed him aside that he got out of the way. "Better, Mr. Parson?" The other two Oa cocked their heads and looked at the Forge Master. He shrugged. "That is the name they used for me," he said. "What is going on here?" Ludwig asked. "Is she dying?" "The curse of ash is taking her," Tiri said quietly, "as it has taken so many others." "How horrific," Ludwig said, creeping closer to the bed. The old woman was delirious. It looked as though her body were collapsing in on itself, as if the disease had burned her from the inside, hollowing out the flesh. "Is there nothing to be done?" "I will do what I can," Parsons said, passing the bed and going to work on a bench in the corner. "Ava is an old friend, from before I left Sanctuary to come here. She will not die if I can help it. Yet. But I thought you said you lived here alone." "I did. Things have changed." Tiri took that as her cue. She squeezed Ava's hand one more time, then stood and collected herself. One moment she was a child mourning a dying parent. The next she was regal, gallant, even beautiful. Ludwig was impressed. The Oa woman took a step closer to him, towering over Ludwig's head. For a long time the curse of ash was an inconvenience. Sometimes it would kill, and we all suffer from it, even me. We fled far enough from the source, deep into the deserts, that we thought we were safe, she said. "The source? Cherufe, you said. Is that true? Did Cherufe do this to you?" "Yes. For our rebellion. He destroyed our cities, our armies, and then cursed our bodies. So we fled into the deserts." Tiri ran a finger absently across one of the cinder-laced scars on her hand. "And that was enough for us to survive. for a very long time. Destroyed cities, did you say? Ludwig asked. His heart was racing. Are there maps of these cities? It was enough until recently, Tiri said, ignoring Ludwig's questions. Something to come back to later. Recently something changed. The curse accelerated. Terufe has returned. The burning man, Jacobson said. Ludwig nodded vigorously, his jowls flopping. Yes, of course, the burning man, he said. Are you saying you can sense him? We are drawn to him, nothing more. Tiri walked to the far edge of the room. As his eyes adjusted to the darkness, Ludwig was now able to tell that there was a door in the middle of that wall. Is this why you contacted us, Parson? You hoped that we would be able to cure this curse of ash? Ludwig leaned closer to the old woman, peering distastefully at her wounds. Miracle cures aren't our purview, particularly. Gretchen may... We know the cure, Tiri said. Terufe must be destroyed once and for all. We contained him once. We will do it again. Ludwig and Jacobson exchanged a glance. Ludwig cleared his throat. You have the means to do this, he asked. Not the means, not yet, but the knowledge. The artifacts you seek, the mysteries you pry out of the dirt. We built those miracles. Tiri turned dramatically. Much has been lost since then, but we remain. I don't think you understand the forces arrayed against you, Jacobson interrupted. The Burning Man commands vast legions of cultists. If the armies of the King's Empire can't contain them, I don't know what 2 engineers and a dying woman can hope to accomplish. It is you who does not understand, Tiri said. She pushed the door open and swept outside. Blinding light flooded in. Grateful to be away from the dying woman's stink, Ludwig followed the Oa leader. They were standing on a porch that overlooked a vast plain to the west. Tiri gestured. I am not alone. Tents and smoking braziers dotted the plains. Caravans of sleek automata trotted between clusters of tents, while outriders patrolled the perimeter. Larger machines lumbered under the weight of armored howdahs, or dragged wagons stuffed with crates and elegant carriages. An entire city of strange sights and stranger residents huddled at the base of the mountain. The Oa have hidden in the wastes for long enough. Terufe is our legacy and our curse. We have no choice but to destroy him or to die. Tiri turned to face the dumbstruck Ludwig. We have chosen to live. But how? What are we? Jacobson blinked in shock. The society isn't set up for this. Now, Jacobson. Ludwig silenced the clerk with his hand. He broke into a wide, hungry smile. I'm sure we can come to a satisfactory arrangement. Cultists stood far from Keris. Wicker fixed his trap behind pale, quavering knuckles. They knew what was coming. Every molecule in the air sparked, tasted of ozone, the sour tang of madness, the immolation of cherry trees. They watched in wonder as Keris lifted her head to the sky. She took in the crowd's collective breath and let the fire in once more. Damian's lenses distorted the Burning Man's figure. The center was a brilliant white tinged with blue. A rainbow of colors radiated off that pinprick of incandescent light. It was the ether's magic being torn apart and scattered into strands of chaotic power. Even with his goggles, it was like staring at the sun. He blinked away tears and lowered his gaze. Everything all right, Damian? Belle asked. She stood a few feet behind him on the mountain pass, the thick woolen lapels of her aviator's jacket pulled tight to her neck. The wind howled through the pass. Yes, fine, I'm fine. He took another trudging step. We're almost there. The snow had barely melted back far enough to open the pass. Damian didn't feel like he could wait any longer. The week spent in his office, studying the tome stolen from the library and cross-referencing it with his copy of the Flammae, had planted a seed in his mind. a seed that would soon sprout into knowledge, if he could just find the right information, uncover the right secret. The secret he suspected that Ramos had also been pursuing. He was so close he could almost feel it, unfolding in his head, drawing him closer. "How is it so cold up here?" Belle muttered into the upraised collar of her jacket. "I swear I'm getting icicles in my sinuses." "What's the matter? Forget your fire?" Damian asked. "You know what I mean," Belle snapped. A surge of warmth accompanied her rage, but it was quickly torn away by the wind scouring the mountainside. "December is always close in this place," Damian mused. "Best keep moving before we attract unwanted attention." The path wound through broken pines and piled snow. There was evidence of an avalanche, and for a moment Damian worried that the entrance he sought might lay buried beneath the packed snow. But as they came around another corner and got a clear view of the summit, his fears were allayed. Ahead was a crack in the cliffside, almost too narrow for any person to fit through. Cool relief washed over Damian's scars. The feeling quickened his heart. It was one he hadn't felt since the journey into the Yellow Crypt. Anticipation. He was on the verge of something big, something risky, something only he could accomplish. "You're sure about this?" Belle asked. They'd paused on a small plateau, just beneath a cleft in the rocks. The winds here were brutal, and even the preternatural heat wafting over the former witch hunter couldn't cut the cold. The two stood close together, perhaps closer physically than they'd been in a long time. Beneath the brutal skull face paint, Damian could see concern on Belle's face. He nodded. "Yes, this is the place. Victor's notes imply the location, and Crid's testimony confirms it. We won't know for certain until we get inside, but I'm sure." "No, not the location, I mean..." Belle paused. "I mean, are you sure this is what you want to do? You know what's in there." "Do I?" Damian asked, almost rhetorically. "I know what I think is in there, what Victor believed he had found, and what the Guild was afraid of. Maybe they were wrong. And if they weren't, if it is..." Her voice trailed off. "I just want to know that you believe you're doing the right thing." "I understand your concerns. You've been with me for so long, Belle, and I will never be able to repay your kindness or your protection." Damian squared his shoulders, looking up at the cleft. "But if this is too much for you, you are free to turn back." Belle snorted and hefted the pack she'd temporarily set down. "I'm with you to the end, Damian, whatever happens." She looked up at the last stretch separating them from the entrance to the cave, a hard 20-foot incline of loose rock and ice. "Let's get at it." Together they scrambled up the final stretch and reached the cleft. It was a narrow crack torn in the living stone, seeping ice like a bloody wound. Beyond the entrance there was only darkness. A steady, cold wind blew out of the cave. "Allow me to take point," Belle said, shouldering her way past Damian. The scholar put a hand on her arm, restraining. "I appreciate the concern, but whatever's in there, I want to face it first," he said. Besides, he couldn't bear the thought of not being the first to see the thing he'd studied for so long. "Stay here and watch the entrance. If something goes wrong in there, at least you'll be able to get out." "Like hell," she said, but turned aside and let Damian enter the cave first. The darkness was absolute. Damian didn't make it more than a couple steps into the cave before he was completely blind. It was much colder inside the cave than it had been outside, the air frigid and sharp, spiking Damian's lungs with frost and stealing his breath. Just behind him, Belle conjured a flame, revealing a narrow passage, and beyond it an open space. The floor glittered in the flickering light. Damian rushed forward. What he saw took his breath away, not because of the chill, but because of its grandeur. They were in a vast cavern, shot through with soulstone and quartz. Thousands of sharp gems lay encrusted around the cavern, emanating bluish light and reflecting the orange from Belle's magic. The floor was a smooth disk of solid ice, its minute crystalline structures glittering in the light. The light carried beneath the ice, following the soulstone deposit, and turning the interior of the cave into a sparkling geode. Belle exhaled in astonishment. There's enough stones in here to pay for a lifetime of luxury. 10 lifetimes. We could buy all of Malifaux City with this. We could buy an army, Damian said. Or more. But what need do we have of an army, dear Belle? He strolled casually into the room. The magic embedded in the soulstone swirled around him, pressing on the wards provided by his runic brands. So much power pressing in, but he was still a void at its center. He took a deep breath. This must be the place. Sandeep spoke of a mine haunted by the memories of his own failure. He never wanted to talk about it. This must be the same seam. He approached one of the gem-encrusted walls, passing a hand close to the outcroppings. As his warded hand drew near, the color in the soulstones dimmed and winked out. He smiled. Ramos and Crid fought over these gems, but the real power is below. The real power is hidden. Leaving the walls behind, Damian went to the center of the room. He knelt and pulled out the stolen book, gloved hand brushing away a layer of frost, revealing the dark, deep ice beneath. So many facts were lining up with what the magical volume said, but even science had a way of embellishing things. There was always going to be a moment of truth, that split second of indecision before results revealed themselves. Damian pulled off his goggles and looked. Something dark moved beneath the ice. So it's true, he whispered. All this time and it was just waiting here. Excited, Damian stood, scanning pages until he found the section he needed. He held the book open at arm's length, flipping between a few pages until he came to a decision. He walked to the nearest wall, testing the embedded crystals with a device he pulled from his pocket. Satisfied, he motioned Belle closer and presented her the book. Belle, he called. Please melt these runes into the wall here, with this soulstone at the center, if you would. I believe there's someone else I'll be meeting shortly. Belle accepted the open book and focused her magic on the end of her finger. The ice hissed and spat as she carved the runes, filling the air with steam and the smell of stagnant water. When she was done, she handed the book back to Damian and stepped back. Should I be ready to fight, she asked. Aren't you always? But no, I don't think that will be necessary. Damian withdrew another small device from his inner pocket. There was a scrying crystal, attuned to soulstone and embedded with the kind of magic needed to communicate with distant spirits. If he had done his calculations correctly, his modifications to the device should serve quite nicely. He set the crystal in the middle of the circle and set it spinning, then stepped back. The crystal produced a steady hum that rose in pitch, warbling through the geode like a singer slightly out of key. The surrounding crystals picked up the sound, reverberating in sympathy to the music. It grew and grew, until the whole cavern felt like it was vibrating. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the hum cut out. Damian looked around the room, trying to detect any movement, physical or etheric. There was nothing. He let out a sigh and reached for the crystal, still spinning through the runes. Well, that was disappointing. The ground shook. A low rumbling filled the cave, like a great mining machine boring through the mountain's heart. The seam of soulstones jangled like stacked plates in an earthquake, and tiny flecks of shattered crystal floated through the air, catching the light from Belle's torch and turning the interior of the cave into a snowfall of reflected light. He and Belle backed away from the crystal. It had started to glow, filling the ruins with liquid light. The soulstone seam came to life. Trapped in the surrounding ice and rock, it struggled to take shape, to press its disparate parts into the shape of a man. Rock crumbled and soulstone warped, swelling and cracking to form hands, an arm, 2 eyes, a face. The wall bulged outward, ready to burst with whatever sentience hid behind it. At last the creature emerged. It was a pile of loose scree and soulstones, roughly in the shape of a man, though it looked like a sculpture that had been left unfinished. It stumbled clear of the wall, parts of its form collapsing and reforming, as though the soul inhabiting the stone had forgotten what it meant to have a body. Eventually it stabilized. Damian smiled and extended a hand. "Lorith Bart, I believe. I am Damian Ravencroft. It is a pleasure to meet you." A handful of soulstones in the golem's body shimmered with magic. A noise like falling boulders emerged from the golem's mouth. Damian cleared his throat. "I came here to find something, Mr. Bart. My story is similar to yours. We both came to Malifaux seeking something. For me, that search is for knowledge, while you came here to find the means to rid yourself of a gift you considered a curse. We both had things taken from us by others. Sonia Crid burned away all that I was. You trusted Sandeep Desai, whose faith in the Winter Witch led to your curse becoming a prison. We're both victims of circumstance. Would you agree?" The golem soulstones flared, but otherwise the creature didn't react. Life is full of potential, but so many seek to bury knowledge or use it for their own cruel games. I believe she is the way to change that, to right this world's wrongs and restore it to order, to usher in an era of change and understanding. I cannot do this without you, Mr. Bart. The Soulstone Geode is the lock, but you are the key. The Soulstone Golem creaked and groaned, its head swinging around in confusion. Deep in the faceted depths of its body, another figure moved, occasionally brushing the surface, like a drowning man coming up briefly for air. Belle creased her brow, and reached for her friend tentatively. "Hey, Damian," Belle said. Damian blinked and turned around. "Yes. Who is that?" "Lorith Bart." Sandeep's notes on the matter are brief and melancholy. Apparently he was a natural summoner, but he wanted nothing to do with the spirit world. Mr. Bart thought Sandeep could help rid him of this curse, and as you can see, things did not work out the way either of them hoped. Damian took a step back, looking the golem up and down. He has been trapped in this seam of soulstone ever since. "Good God," Belle whispered. "Can you save him?" "I wouldn't even know where to start. Once this is over and I can study his condition, then I will most certainly try. But for now, he can help me, and that's what matters." Damian took a step forward, raising his voice. "Mr. Bart, you need to listen to me. Good heavens, Damian, sometimes you're almost too much." Belle shouldered Damian aside and approached the golem. "Lorith, can you hear me? Do you understand?" The golem shifted away from Belle, but the figure swimming in its depths drew nearer. Through the distortion of the gemstones and the strange shifting lights that traveled across the creature's surface, it was difficult to make out the figure's features. But slowly, a face emerged. Round, sad eyes and dark hair, and a mouth pulled wide in terror. He stared at Belle with those empty eyes. "I'm sorry this has happened to you. Sandeep is, well, I can't say a friend, but I know him, and I know he would never have let this happen if he could have prevented it." Belle looked over her shoulder at Damian. "Is there anything we can do for him?" Damian blinked up at the golem, thinking deeply. After a moment he cleared his throat. "Mr. Bart, Sandeep's notes mentioned a family, a daughter, right?" The image of a face lost some of its terror. Its attention was focused entirely on Damian. "I'm sure I can find out what's become of her. I'm a man of some means, both here and back on Earth. I can see that she is taken care of, protected." The face hung still for a long moment, then slowly faded back into the golem. Belle's face broke, but as the figure disappeared, the golem stirred into action, One lumbering arm swung around and reached toward Damian, its hand open. From the center of the palm emerged a smaller arm, and from that another, until a human-sized hand was right before Damian. The scholar took it and shook. The golem's shell faded to an ethereal manifestation of angles. Within was the outline of a man. An explosive wave of stimuli, hundreds of voices mingling with snippets of absent magic and half-finished elements, washed over Damian's mind. He felt it impact the emptiness inside his soul. The yellow crypt's brands greedily dispersed it, leaving clarity the man had never experienced. After a moment of recovery, Damian realized there was a voice. "The quiet. Can you hear me?" "I can hear you, Lohith," Damian murmured. He felt peace emanate from the man within the golem. "She told me her herald would be empty. Someone making order out of chaos." "How did this happen to you?" Lohith rumbled. "I sacrificed myself to learn the witch hunter's greatest secret. Sonia Crid burned every ounce of magic from my body. I am anathema to it." "You chose this?" the golem asked. Something about the man's tone was accusatory. "I did," Damian confessed. "I knew the cost, but it was high. Magic was the greatest puzzle, and I've lost it. I have no way, no purpose." "It's taken me a very long time to understand, Damian Ravencroft," Lohith said, voice heavy, slow, and clear. "All I wanted was to be free of magic. I wanted to return to Earth, to India, and be home again. I wanted to see my daughter grow. Now I understand. Fate had a different path for me, but you must decide." That familiar something, the presence that Damian felt since he pulled the book from the Library of All Things, replaced Lohith's voice. It surrounded the void in his soul, that eternal emptiness Sonia Crid had seared into him with the Yellow Crypt's chains of forbidden magic. Promises of order, of direction, of cataloguing the proper and uncodified cut into Damian's grey matter. Disarray and disorder, every flippant whim that changed the course of what should have been, turned into precision and logic. Diving into pools of eternity, surrounded by confusion and panic, and harnessing it all against itself to become the epicenter, the guidance of all things. Banishing the fog of uncertainty from every problem, seeing absolute truth and universal finality laid out before him. It was terrifying. It was all Damian had ever wanted. "Damian," Bell asked in a cautious, concerned voice, "are you sure you want to do this?" Damian half turned to Bellaventine. In the burning light of the geode, his eyes looked entirely white. "I sacrificed everything I had for knowledge once. I'm willing to do it again." Damian looked down at the enormous soulstone trapped beneath the ice, and the dark thing lurking there. "I want to witness it all."
That's it for another episode of the Breachside Broadcast. Join us next time for more Tales of Malifaux.